So a question I get surprisingly a lot is how good are pro players, or why are COD pro players like supposedly much better than me, or like what actually makes COD pros good? So that's what we're going through today. I thought we could answer a handful of these questions and talk about why COD pros are just that good and what makes COD pros better than like basically anyone actually thinks. So for those of you who may not be as accustomed to the competitive Call of Duty scene, there's a massive web of talent that kind of sorts itself out through open bracket tournaments, through play, amateur scene competitions, and then of course the pro scene. I think it's really hard for a lot of people to understand the skill gap, this level of amateur versus this level of amateur, and what is this level of amateur down here compared to like an average American sport. So first of all, we're gonna go through a lot of the skills that pro players have developed over their years that makes them so good, and then we'll quantify and compare it to American sports and how they're organized. So it should be a pretty good video. Let's get into it. So there's just a handful of categories or skills that go into being a pro player or a COD competitive player, and of course the pros, like if it's like a Madden rating, they're 100 on the majority of these skills, or very high up there where they're just that good. So we're gonna go through a lot of these skill categories and talk about them. So the first area, which is relative to all areas of Call of Duty, so we're gonna break it down into like respawn skills and search and destroy skills, and then there's overall skills we'll talk about first. So the overall skills specifically are gun skill and movement. Gun skill can be broken down into a handful of subcategories in itself. So, you know, overall you've got the gun skill, which is kind of the combination of your ability to control your gun's recoil. Centering is a skill that's talked about a lot in the competitive community. Basically your ability to keep your screen centered on where you think the enemy will be next, or where the enemies could be, and it's an incredibly important skill that comes along with like awareness and things like that we'll talk about later. And then of course there's a natural ability to like snap onto targets, quickly react, and control your analog stick to dominate somebody else. So that's kind of like a part of the gun skill. And then movement is another part of gun skill that is so underrated. Elite movement is like the perfect combination of slides, jump shots, drop shots, shoulder peeking, moving, maneuvering, and using your mental ability to outmaneuver another player is all part of the gun skill that plays into every single moment of Call of Duty. So I really can't underemphasize how good pros are in this category alone before we even get into all the other technical aspects of the game modes and everything else, because I mean, it really is hard to fathom. Of course, there's like the pubs players who probably possess a lot of these similar movements. The guys that pub stomp, the best pub stompers in the world, possess a lot of these similar traits, but where they get lost is the rest of the traits when it comes specifically to how to play competitive Call of Duty. Maybe you have the best shot in the world, but you just don't naturally catch on to the competitive nature, the communication aspects, or the strategies of competitive Call of Duty. So you could have like a 10 out of 10 in recoil control or movement or whatever it is, centering, but then you could have like a 2 out of 10 in awareness, or a 1 out of 10 in communication, and then it could come crumbling down. So the next broad area is communication / awareness. I wanted to combine both of these, but individually they're very important. So the first aspect, I mean, communication is so key to the power that pro players have. I literally just put a video about this 2 days ago because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, man, pros communication skills are so underrated. So I did like a learn from the pros from like pro listen-ins. So I highly recommend you guys go check that out, because I thought it was a really cool video explaining how pros communicate and how you can improve it as well. But their ability to call out something while in the middle of the gunfight and then react immediately to what their teammates are saying, listening while attacking, their listening and communication abilities are on point and incredibly good compared to the average person out there. The communication isn't just the call outs, it's talking with your teammates through strategies, positioning, pre-round strats, everything else like that we'll talk about more, even specifically with hardpoint, search and destroy. But like, again, there's so much just in the communication alone that goes into being a successful Call of Duty player, and a lot of players can make huge strides by just improving their communication abilities throughout their time. So then there's awareness, and awareness kind of comes, it's kind of a broad term. Basically it's like your mini-map awareness, your map awareness, and your anticipation kind of all pile into one. But like, it's a very important characteristic for pro players. So all of that communication, the awareness of the mini-map and the map as a whole, allows you to anticipate and be aware of your surroundings in game, which can be the difference in a gunfight or in a sequence or how you play as a team. And it's kind of hard to quantify into one word. I kind of would just want to say awareness, but you could really break it down to like map awareness and anticipation. that kind of does it for all of like the overall broad ones. So let's go into more specific ones for respawn, game modes, and for search and destroy. So when it comes to respawn, in hardpoint specifically, you have to know the technicalities of the rotations, understanding the timing and flow of that game mode on that specific map down to a T. And that's really hard to judge as a team, and that works with playing the game a lot and communicating with your teammates and just really practicing and learning it. But that comes with time, and that's something the pros know better than anyone else. Then your ability and your team's ability to set up on hills is so important in how you position to create and gain map control. The pros are better at it than anyone else, and that's generally one of the biggest reasons for why they dominate AM teams so badly. You combine their gun skill and their knowledge of the maps, the spawns, and how to set up and control a hill. It's just better than anyone else, and it really does set them apart. So this one, their baiting and trading ability is very broad and definitely not just specific to respawn. It could probably go in its own broad category, but their ability to bait and trade is elite compared to basically all other amateurs. So how two people on a map can play together with pros is way better than your average AM. And so what they do, you know, they can jump out, shoulder peek with one player, the other guy jumps out, the other guy follows him, and then trades those kills or baits those kills. It's literally, the pros are just so much better at it than anybody else. It's a skill that is so hard to learn because it takes two people to be able to do it, and it just kind of has to happen and become second nature for players, and it takes a long time to develop that because it's just not natural off the rip. So it just definitely is an X factor for pros because they have that down to a T. And then of course every individual and every team's ability to use smokes, trophies, nades, stuns, flashes, whatever else, their ability to use tacticals and lethals to their advantage, and to be able to nade the right spot, stun the right spots, smoke the right areas to create map control, to block lines of sight, whether really in search or dom, is also a massive X factor when it comes to how a pro team plays, and the best pros are just better at it than anyone else. And then in respawn specifically, the best way to approach certain situations, like whether it's like how to break a setup on a certain hill or how to break a setup on a flag or something like that, pro teams and the pro players, they know how to approach every situation better than anybody else. So it's kind of their awareness mixed with their expertise, with their instincts, with their communication. That ability all culminates into their ability to break, push, and exchange kills and take over hills and hard points better than anybody else. So now in search and destroy. So again, we're gonna talk about the smokes and stuns real quick. How they use the smoke, stuns, and everything else, all the tactical equipment in search is just to a better extent than anyone else. They know their pre-nades, their smokes, their stuns, and how to use them to win in those situations way better than you and I. Then going into each round, they always have a plan, a setup, or a strategy that they've either predetermined or have determined going into that round of how to approach this, and they know where each other are going to be. They're able to picture it in their heads, and they're able to methodically eliminate where the opposing team is on the map based off their own lines of sight. Then of course, a pro's natural instinct to know when to push and when to play slow and how to play fast. Those are all things that come with time and a lot of experience in the game of search and destroy. And some guys have a better feel for it than others. And that's why, like, this is a stat that might fluctuate between pros, where some guys have a better instinct of this than others. But at the end of the day, it is something that pros are better at determining than anybody else. Again, in search, they know how to plant bombs and where to plant bombs for certain lines of sight. They have those strategies down. They know how to break bombs with smokes and how to attack certain players in advantageous positions. And they know how to counter certain strategies. Like, so let's say, for example, when somebody throws a smoke, you're stunning into the smoke, you're nading into the smoke. Or if they have somebody usually sat up in a certain area, you smoke them out, you rush them, you push the sniper hard, whatever it is. Those types of things are reactions and counters and strategies that the pros just have tucked away that the average amateur wouldn't have to react to those random situations that pop up across a series or a map or a game. And then of course, they know how to play together in 2v2s, 3v3s, and how to maximize their man up mentality, how to set up in a 4v3, a 3v2, a 2v2, a 1v2, and they know what type of play and how to approach those situations, give them the best mathematical odds to win a round and play successfully. And when you combine all of these skills, it makes a pro player that is very, very difficult to compete against. And so if a pro is, you know, in the 90s or 100 in most of these stats, like you or me might be at like a 40 or a 50, maybe a 60, and it takes a long time to develop these stats or these skills as you get better at the game. So I'm going to kind of bring it to a close here, but basically how you can picture it is it's very similar to an NFL setup, an MLB setup, any professional sport. The skill gaps are very similar between the most elite pros and the most average of players that play casually that skill gap between, if in American sports, it would be high school, college, then AM level, and then pro, really does work in a very similar way to competitive Call of Duty. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I mean, we went through a lot about the pro scene in this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, like, comment, favorite, subscribe. I really do appreciate the support. I'm trying to do this full-time, long-term, and I cannot do that without you guys. So the likes, the comments, the shares, whatever it is, it really does help. So as always, guys, I'm your voice of ILLeY, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.